In this briefing, I cover the VIABLUE Rocket cable lifter system. I've been using this system for several months now and have found the lifters to be quite useful and enjoyable. Let's find out why.
This video is sponsored by Hegel Music Systems. Our latest product is the D50, a reference class digital-to-analog converter, affectionately nicknamed the Raven. The Hegel D50 DAC represents the pinnacle of digital-to-analog conversion, delivering music as it was meant to be heard, pure, detailed, and profoundly moving. Let it take your music to new heights. Hegel Music Systems. Believe your own ears.
VIABLUE is a cable and accessories manufacturer located in Germany. As a reviewer, I'm constantly wiring and rewiring my reference systems, and when I saw the Rocket XL and Rocket lifters, I had the feeling they might work for my application. Now, reviews aren't about the reviewer or the reviewer's tastes, however, so let's examine the idea here so that you can determine if the Rocket or Rocket XL might work for you. The idea of the Rocket system is simple. Build metal stands with 2 O-rings and a rubber base. The stand moves the cables off the floor, and the O-rings allow the cables to be separated into 3 levels. Building the stand from metal gets some mass into the equation and limits, but doesn't prevent, the tendency of the cables to fall over. The O-rings are surprisingly easy to detach and reattach, an operation that can be done with one hand. I found this useful when cables were located in difficult-to-reach areas. The stands are available in 3 colors: black, charcoal gray, and silver. You can see all the colors here, though I suspect a normal installation would be monochromatic. I also found that using the Rocket's different O-ring levels made the most sense for cables that are not working at the same time. That is, cables from different phono preamps or different line inputs like a CD and a streamer. For speaker wiring, dedicated lifters made sense to my brain. Before we go any further, I should say a word about why cable separation might matter. I don't intend to prove that it does, but engineers who know more about signal integrity than I do suggest that cable spacing can matter in some systems. All right, so here we go on cable lifters, wire dressing, and signal integrity. As I said, I'm aware that some audiophiles are troubled by the notion that distances between cables could matter. Similarly, they're troubled that the floor might affect the signal in the cable. What follows probably won't change the minds of people committed to the idea that they have a commanding and comprehensive understanding of the entirety of physics and engineering. But for the rest of us, here are some things to consider. Also note, before listening to this, it may be helpful for some of you to abandon the idea that electricity flows through wires like water through a pipe. You might have been taught this in high school physics. It's more complex than that, for example with magnetic and electrostatic fields being generated and not contained by the wires. Now, here are some simple effects to note for why cable lifters and cable dressing may be helpful to signal integrity. Electromagnetic waves produced by currents in 2 wires can interfere with each other, leading to effects like crosstalk, where a signal from one wire affects another. This interference happens due to the magnetic fields created by the currents in the wires. A current in a wire will always be accompanied by a magnetic field. These will be asymmetrical fields that are easily measurable from 6 inches away, but the magnetic field is considerably weaker as it leaves the cable. That can be induced from across the room and beyond, dependent on voltage and frequency. This matters greatly, as this is how most radio frequency noise is induced into a cable and modulates, that is, distorts, the low-level signal. Thus, the more pressing issue than crosstalk will be induced RF noise that is capacitively coupled into a cable, the electrostatic field. That will create, in all electrical conductors, a modulating or masking effect that reduces the resolution of low-level signals. Capacitive coupling happens because there's some finite capacitance between every 2 conductors in the universe. For things far enough apart, this can usually be ignored, which leads to lifters and other devices to create cable-to-cable separation. There's always the potential for something to be coupled and then modulated, but it requires finding a given circuit's point for which the effect is substantially diminished. We talked to cable makers, and they said that for most cables, that's around 5 to 6 inches from each cable to any solid surface, such as a floor or a cabinet. One needs to be practical, but these are technical ideals. The issue with the floor, even when conductive pipes and other materials aren't present, at least for many feet, is the relative ease of a dielectric insulation material like wood, marble, stone, brick, or carpet to couple RF noise directly into a cable versus suspension of the cable in air, the latter having far greater electrostatic resistance. Thus, coupling of induced noise is greatly diminished with something like cable lifters. Static electricity can also affect signals in cables, sometimes causing issues like signal dropouts or reduced data transfer speeds. Static electricity, also known as electrostatic discharge, can disrupt or even damage electronic components. This can happen when static charges build up and discharge through cables, especially in environments where static is prevalent. Convenience is another factor. Audio reviewers and some consumers change components frequently. Some find that having the wiring spaced with greater distances makes it easier to reroute cables needed with new configurations. And it looks nicer. As I said, all of this is not proof, but I hope it makes it clear that cable interactions don't fit in the voodoo or snake oil zone either. I will mention, in case it's helpful, that the set of changes that make small differences like cables, cable lifters, and isolation seem to add up as sophistication increases. It helps, in my experience, to understand that these adjustments aren't like switching speakers, where you go from one set of large errors to another set of large and easily noticed errors. That, however, doesn't mean the differences with cable products aren't useful. The differences tend to show up in the ability of a stereo system to resolve small details and timing information. This, in turn, shows up as soundstage and sound space information very frequently. If you're still working with voicing on your system, cables and cable lifters are not likely the most effective approach. On the other hand, if you're investing in high-end cables and don't have cable lifters, you may get suboptimal results. All right, let's summarize. I found that the VIABLUE Rocket and Rocket XL cable lifters worked as I wanted, and I imagine you would want. They're easy to use, and I found them attractive. The Rocket and Rocket XL are appropriate for well-developed systems and could be considered necessary. I hope you've enjoyed this briefing on the VIABLUE Rocket cable lifter system. If you have, we hope you'll check out our library of other reviews. Thanks for watching.